So now we're on the top of Daf Yudalad Amud Beis, and we're talking about Shnei Nitzarim. Now he puts two boards on top of his sukkah as schach. One board is, let's say, 2 tefachim, the other is 2 tefachim. And if we add the two together, we get 4 tefachim. Ein mitzarf. We do not integrate to pasel the sukkah. And that would apply, apparently, even if the entire sukkah would be covered by these 2 nisarim. Now, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with Rabbi Meir with regard to nisarim. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who allows you to use nisarim as schach, then if I combine these two, I have a problem. But if I don't combine the two, then each one is less than 4 tefachim. Rabbi Meir omer nisarim kisdinim. Rabbi Meir is quoted as saying that just like in Stinim, we add the two together, we get a shear of arba tefachim, we pass the sukkah. So too in nisarim, we're going to add the two and we're going to pass the sukkah. Bishleim l'shmuel diamar b'she'ein arba machlokes avol b'sheyesh ben arba divrei kol psula. According to Shmuel holds that even Rabbi Yehuda accepted the Xeris Nisarim in the case where you have a neset, a board that is 4 tefachim wide. Now we can understand this comment of ein mitztarfin. Why? Because what we want to make sure is that we don't have a neser of 4 tefachim. And if we say that each neser is separate from the other one, and each neser has only 2 tefachim or 3 tefachim in width, then Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that these nisarim, each one onto itself, is kosher, and we're not going to be mitzaref the 2 nisarim, and therefore the sukkah is kshera. We're not going to pass the sukkah by adding the, let's say, 3 tefachim with 3 tefachim to establish a neser of 6 tefachim. Each neser is only 3 tefachim. Now, according to Shmuel, Rabbi Meir passes a neser of 3 tefachim. So therefore, even if ein mitztarfim, nevertheless the sukkah is a sukkah psula according to Rabbi Meir, because each neser is schach posel, and basically the sukkah is now being covered by schach posel. Umay umitztarfim. And what does it mean that Rabbi Meir says that just like in the case of Sdinim, so too in the case of Nisarim, it's mitztarfin? Mitztarfin li'arba. It means we're going to take the 2 Nisarim, each one is 3 tefachim wide, and we're going to add them together, and we end up with a shear of 4 tefachim, right in the middle of your sukkah. But according to Rav, the Omar b'sheyesh b'hen arba machlokes, that even Rav Meir only passes if there are 4. If the neser is less than 4 tefachim wide, according to Rav, even Rabbi Meir would agree that the sukkah is kshera, is hechi dami. What is this case in the Brisa? Ida ispahu arba. If the neser has 4 tefachim, lavalahu litztarufe. Well, why do we have to bother, according to Reb Meir, to be mitztarif the 2? If each and every one of these nisarim in and of itself has the width of 4 tefachim, that makes into schach posel, according to Reb Meir. So there's no need to be mitztarif. But what does it mean, ein mitztarif? What difference does it make whether mitztarif or ein mitztarif? You got a shear of schach posel, the neser of 4 tefachim. Either less arba, if it's less than 4 tefachim, but couldn't be almanin. According to Rav, anything less than any neser that's less than 4 tefachim is kanim. It means kashal schach, and it shouldn't be possible. It should not Pasal the Sukkah, even according to Rabbi Meir. And the Gemara answers, Li'olam to Ispu Arba. Let's interpret the Bryce according to Rav. And we're talking about Nisarim that have the width of 4 tefachim. Therefore, according to Rabbi Meir, any one of these Nisarim would be enough to passel the Sukkah if it's in the middle of the Sukkah. Umay mitztarfin, but the word mitztarfin here, and that was the question we asked, why mitztarfin? Who cares whether mitztarfin if each Neser itself is 4 tefachim wide? The answer is that these Nisarim are not in the middle of the Sukkah, but rather they're on the side of the Sukkah, right near the Dofen. And therefore, mitztarfin, li arba amos minatzad. So again, what's going on now in this reinterpretation of the Brisa? The Nisarim are located not in the middle of his Sukkah, but rather on the side of his Sukkah, samach l'dofen. And if it's samach l'dofen, then up to arba amos, even if it's chach posel, we can be machshir the Sukkah under the law of dofen akuma. So Rabbi Meir now is going to say the following, that if we mitzaref the 2 Nisarim, then you would end up with a share of 4 amos of schach posel, and that's going to posel the Sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, holds, and we're going according to Rav now, that Nisarim are ksherim l'schach, and therefore you're not going to be mitzaref then, one neser to the other in order to passel the Sukkah, because each neser is kosher schach. Because according to Rav, Rabbi Yehuda never accepted the basic zera of Mishum Tikra. So all this is what's called the Lishna Kama. This is the first transmission of Rav and Shmuel. Now the Gemara is going to offer a second tradition, a different transmission, a Lishna Basra, which is going to introduce a new opinion.
How would you translate? How would the Rav translate the Lishna Basra?
The second transmission, the alternative transmission. Basra means the last. In other words, there were 2 traditions. One tradition had a Lishna Kama, and that's how it presented it. And then there was another tradition, a dissenting tradition that had an alternative tradition. That's called the Lishna Basra.
They discussed in that.
Yeah, in the base medrash of Ravina Rabashi when they authored the Gemara. Okay, so now, according to the Dea, according to the opinion that we're about to embark upon, and I'm going to read to you this note, Dafka b'dvarim apsulim l'schach bohem el she'ein b'yechad mem levado shir kidei lift. So yesh makom laduna mitztarfin o lo mitztarfin. For maksherim l'schach ein shaykh b'hem loshen tziruf. When we talk about something that's possible, and you have 2 different psulim on top of your sukkah, schach, then you can talk about tziruf. But if each one unto itself is kosher, then we don't talk about tziruf. We would not use the terminology ein mitztarfin zeluzeh, because each one is kosher and you're allowed to use it as schach. So what's the application of mitztarfin? So therefore, Lishna Achrina, here's where we're going to prove from the Brisa that we just quoted that Shmuel is correct. Bishleima l'Shmuel di Omar b'she'ein bohem arba machlokes. That fundamentally Rabbi Yehuda also accepted the gzera of tikra and pasels for a neser if it's got the shear of a 4 tefachim width. Aval yeshman arba divrei kol psula. Rabbi Yehuda agrees. So now we can interpret the Brisa as referring to a case where you have Nisarim that have the width of 4 tefachim. And even in that case, the Brisa will record a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. This is not the original machlokes. The original machlokes going to Shmuel was when it was less than 4 tefachim wide. And if you have a Nesa that's 4 tefachim wide, even Rabbi Yehuda would pass it. But now we have another machlokes. And the machlokes can be mitzaref 2 nisarim, each one that has 4 tefachim. Umay mitzarefim li arba amos minatzad. And now we have machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. When you have two nesarim, each one is possible, and that's true. Bein Rabbi Yehuda, bein Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Yehuda also agrees that if it's 4 tefachim wide, it is a neser that's possible. Rabbi Yehuda agrees and accepts the gzeras tikra. Now you can have another issue. I have two nesarim, each one is 4 tefachim wide. Can I combine them together in a way that if it's samach l'dofen, I might have an extension of schach posel that's 4 amos. And if it's 4 amos, then we cannot apply the principle of dofen akuma. So Rabbi Meir is going to hold mitztarfin li'arba amos, and Rabbi Yehuda holds ein mitztarfin. So Rabbi Yehuda will allow you in this case to apply the principle of dofen akuma because you have a shear of less than 4 amos, because each neser, which is more than 4 tefachim, but is considered an entity unto itself. And on that, Rabbi Meir says mitztarfin, that just like we apply the principle of mitztarfin to sdinim, we're going to apply the principle of mitztarfin to nisarim as well. Ela l'Rav, but according to Rav, who holds that the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir is in a case of nisarim that have 4 tefachim, and Rabbi Yehuda still maintains, nevertheless, even though it's 4 tefachim wide, it's schach kosher, because Rabbi Yehuda never accepted the gzeras tikra. Is bishleim Rabbi Meir? I could understand according to Rabbi Meir, who passes nisarim that have 4 tefachim of width. My mitztarfin li'arba amos minatzad. That now that I have a neser that's 4 tefachim wide, and therefore it's chach posel, I have another neser contiguous to that neser, which is 4 tefachim wide, and they're both on the side of the sukkah, not in the middle of the sukkah, but near the dofen. And now Rabbi Meir is going to tell us mitztarfin. And we're going to add these 2 nitzarim of 4 tefachim each to create 4 amos of schach posel, and to be mafkia, to remove the din of what? Of dofen akuma. El Rabbi Yehuda di'amar afilu yesh b'en arba kshera, according to Rav, that Rabbi Yehuda rejected the entire entity of what? Of gzeras tikra and a psul of nisarim, even if they're 4 tefachim wide, it's still kshera, is my aim mitztarfin. You have schach kosher. What's the application? What's the application of the concept of mitztarfin? You have schach kosher. You could always be mitzarf schach kosher. No relevance. The answer is Aili the cover Rabbi Meir mitztarfin is Omer Rabbi Yehuda ein mitztarfin. For the symmetry, linguistically, of the Brisa uses the terminology for Rabbi Yehuda of ein mitztarfin. Even though really in truth, according to the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, you could be Masechet with these nisarim, even though they're 4 tefachim wide. That's Rav's understanding, and therefore the concept of mitztarfin, ein mitztarfin is irrelevant. But we're going to use the term ein mitztarfin to indicate that the schach is still kosher and the sukkah is still ksher. Tanya kavasi de Rav, and Tanya kavasi de Shmuel. Now we have 2 brisos. One briso will support Rav, and the other Shmuel. Tanya kavasi de Rav, sichecha bin isarim. If he uses schach on his sukkah that are boards, shell eretz of an 8 eretz, which I believe in English is called a cedar tree. You can check me out in the English translation. I don't have the book now because I lent it to you. Is she'ein bohem arba. If it has less than 4 tefachim, divrei hakol, even Rabbi Meir would agree. Kshera, yesh ben arba, Rabbi Meir posel, and Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Explicitly, like Rav, that the tradition is that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda argued about the sarim that have the width of 4 tefachim. The Brisa continues and presents the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Maisa b'shas sakana, and this is during the kingship of the Romans, and they instituted gzera. And they said, no, we're not allowing the Jews to fulfill any of their mitzvahs. And it was a very dangerous situation to set up a sukkah And the Maisa happened that Heviu Nisarim, Shahay Ben Arba, they brought these boards that were 4 tefachim wide, and therefore it would not look like a sukkah, it would look like a bayis. Sichachnu al gabi mirpeses. We put these slats as a roof on our porch. In the footnote here, he says mirpeses hainu prosdor. So over al pnei pische al lios habatu. Fine. So this is the way they got out to the chutzah through a mirpeset. And apparently it had 3 walls. We sat under these nisarim, even though they had 4 tefachim. So Rabbi Yehuda says, you see clearly that we can be machshir a sukkah, even though it's made of nisarim that are wider than 4 tefachim, which would support the shita of Rav, that Rabbi Yehuda was machshir, even if the nisarim are more than 4 tefachim. So this brisa definitely reflects the shita of Rav. Amru lo, the Chacham say v'chimisham raya, ain't shasa sakona raya. You can't prove anything about what you're allowed to use for schach in a case of shas sakona. So here we have to take a little bit of an introduction here. What the Gemara means by ain't shasa sakona raya means that there's what's called a psul d'oraisa and a psul d'rabbanan. In the case of nisarim, even according to Reb Meir, and even if they're 4 tefachim plus wide, the Torah would not passel such nisarim because number 1, they're not makabel tumah, and number 2, they gdela min haaretz, they grow from the ground. It's only the Rabbanan who instituted Gzeir and passel these nisarim because of Gzeiras tikra. If that be the case, then in a shas hakana, when you have no choice, then you rely on the dinto rights. So you'll sit in the sukkah that has nisarim, which is schach possible because the schach is only possible midrabanan. And another point that I wanted to add to this Gemara is that apparently, if Rabbi Yehuda meant to quote this case as a raya, it must mean that they made a bracha when they sat in this sukkah. Because if they didn't make a bracha, then maybe Taka wasn't a sukkah kshera, and they were just sitting there like as a zecher, let's remind ourselves of what we did in the good old days before the Gzeira, the Malchus of Romi, and we sat in the sukkah. But it was just a facsimile of a sukkah. It wasn't the real thing. No, the fact that they made a bracha on the sukkah means that it was a mitzvah of sukkah. Now the Gemara quotes a brisa to support Shmuel. B'nisarim shel eretz sheyesh b'hem arba divrei hakol psula. If you have a board that's 4 tefachim wide, then even Rabbi Yehuda concedes that it's possible with sukkah. But she'ein b'hem arba, Rabbi Meir posted Rabbi Yehuda machshir. This is word for word the sheet of Shmuel, that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir only argue about nisarim she'ein b'hem rochav arba. As Rav Papa explained before, it has more than the width of 3 tefachim, but less than the width of 4 tefachim. If it has a width of 4 tefachim, even Rabbi Yehuda will passel the sukkah. Now the brisa continues to clarify that there's a scenario, a situation in which even Rabbi Meir would agree that you can use nisarim as schach. Mode Rabbi Meir, yesh bein neser leneser kimelo neser, sheminiach psal beinehem ukshera. So what happened in this case? He's got 2 nisarim, and these are psulim l'schach according to Rabbi Meir. But he doesn't put them one near each other. He puts them with a revach, a distance between one neser and the other, and how much airspace is there between one neser and the other? Kimlo neser, which means the shear of the width of the nisarim. Shemeniach sol beinehem. What he could do in this case is he could take schach kosher. It's called psolas gored v'yekev. It's a real straw kind of thing, and he could place it in the airspace between the 2 nisarim, and the sukkah is now a sukkah kshera. What's this all about? So for this, we have to introduce a sugya that's going to come later on at Daf Yud Ches to explain why the Nisarim don't passel the sukkah. We're talking about a long sukkah that is 8 amos, exactly 8 amos long, and 8 amos is the equivalent of 48 tfachim. And why is that? Because every amma has how many tfachim? 6 tfachim. So 6 times 8 is 48. Correct? If I remember from my what was it, 3rd grade. So in other words, the Gemara later on is going to talk about a case of a very long sukkah that is 8 amos long, which is 48 tfachim long. And near the dofen of the sukkah, he puts a neser of 4 tfachim, which again, as we said over and over again, is dofen akuma. Even if you hold that 4 tfachim is possible. And we're going now according to Shmuel, that Rabbi Meir passels in the case of 4 tfachim, and even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that if it's 4 tfachim wide, it's possible, according to Shmuel. Now, right next to this neser, he has what's called a psal, a samach lamed, which is chach kosher. Now, he puts another neser, and then after that he puts more psal, and he keeps going from psal to neser. And in this case, iniach l'serigim shlosha nisarim ushlosha psolim. So he's got 3 nisarim, and between each one of the 3 nisarim, he's got psolim, which we said is chak kosher. So he's got now, in a sense, 6 different sections of, we'll use the word schach on top of his sukkah. He's got 3 nisarim, 3 psolim, but they're intertwined, right? Interspaced. Now, the last 4 tfachim, which are in the middle of the sukkah, are psal. So he's got, if you go, let's say, from right to left, when you get to the, let's call it, the 3rd section, which is psal, or psal, he's got 4 tfachim of psal, and then if you go from left to right, and you get to the middle of the sukkah, you get another 4 tfachim of psal. So all told, what you have in the middle of the sukkah is 8 tfachim of psal. So nimtza sheyesh be'emtza hasukkah shnei psolim sheyesh b'shneim yachad shir shel 8 tfachim, right? 4 and 4, because 4 is the size of Malon Neser, and that's more than 7 tfachim. The minimum size of a sukkah, the shir of a sukkah ketana, is 7 tfachim. So now he's got 8 tfachim of psal. He can sit underneath the psal. He's got nisarim on his right side and on his left side, the passel of the sukkah. He says, Mishum shebedofen hasukkah ad sof haneser hashlishi yesh esrim tfachim. He's got only 20 tfachim, right? 4. Second, how does he get 20 tfachim? Right, 4 times 5 is 20, am I right? So what he has here is 4 tfachim of neser, 4 tfachim of psal, another 4 tfachim of neser, and another 4 tfachim of psal. And he's got 4 tfachim of airspace. So all told, he's got 20 tfachim. Now, how if you convert 20 tfachim into amos, then it's less than 4 amos, right? Because 4 amos would be 4 times 6 is 24. It's 24 tfachim. He's got only 20 tfachim. So therefore, the schach posel, since it's less than arba amos samach l'dofen, then we apply the principle of dofen akuma. So basically, he's got dofen akuma on both of his sides, the extreme right and the extreme left. In the middle, he's got 8 tfachim's worth of pesel, which is schach kosher. So the dofen akuma will prevent a psul in the sukkah. He can only eat in the sukkah or sleep in the sukkah underneath the 8 tfachim in the middle of the sukkah of pesel. Rabbi Yehuda is mekil with regard to the tsarim if they have less than 4 tfachim. Shim nosan oleh neser shurachav arba tfachim. If he puts on top of the sukkah neser, which is 4 tfachim, then it passes the sukkah. But it all depends on where it's located. Let's say he puts the neser, which has 4 tfachim, and it's schach posel, but it's samach l'dofen, and it's less than 4 amos, kshera, then we can be machshir the sukkah. He can only sit under the part that has schach kosher, but ein yishenim tachlit, he's not allowed to sit under the nesarim, or that neser that has a rochav of arba tfach, which is schach posel. Even though the sukkah is kshera, but to sleep under the dofen akuma, which is schach posel of a neser that's 4 tfachim wide, that he's not allowed to do, and that negates his kima mitzvah. Itmar hafacham al tzidehem. What happens if he takes the neser and instead of putting it flat on the top of the sukkah, he turns it vertically? So now a neser that has the width of 4 tfachim, and it doesn't have the thickness, right now the width turns out to be the length, if you follow what I mean, right? The height, if you will, because he's putting it on its side. Is Rav Huna Amar Psula, Rav Chizda Rabba Bar Rav Huna Amri Kshera. And the Gemara tells the story now. Ikla Rav Nachman L'Sura. Rav Nachman now came to the city of Sura in Bavel. Ul Legabe Rav Chizda Rabba Bar Rav Huna. They went up to ask him this question about a neser shahafchan al tzideim, thinking that he would certainly say the sukkah is kosher, and they would bring that as support for their shita. The Amrile, and they asked him, hafachan al tzideim mahu, Amar lahu, and he responded psula, but he explained why. Why should it be psula? He's not using it as schach, he's standing it upwards. Shenasu kishipudim shel mateches, because when the Rabbanan said that a neser that's wide 4 tfachim is possible, they made it into schach posel. They considered it like mateches, as if it was metal. Metal is both a kli and it's makabel tumah. Amalu Rav Huna. Rav Huna said, he was the bar plukta, who said that is posel. He said, Lo amri lechu amri kavose. Didn't I tell you to accept my opinion? And now you see that Rav Nachman accepted my opinion. Amrulei umi amrulon mar. Did you say to us, Taima? Did you give a reason, a logical explanation, and we rejected it? Had you given us a reason, maybe we would have accepted. We would have been on board. You never asked me time for an explanation. And I denied you a reason. Had you asked me, I would have given you this reasoning, which in fact Rav Nachman accepts, that Nasa kishipudim shel mateches. Gemara says, Lema misayele. Let's bring a proof to Rav Huna from the following brisa, and the brisa is talking about what's called the Succa Ketana, a very small sukkah, which is 7 tfachim by 7 tfachim. It doesn't have the size of Rosho Ruva V'Shalchano. Or alternatively, Shenifritz Abba on the bottom of the sukkah, on the outside, there was a pirza, it opened up. Kadeshi is daker ba gedi bavas rosh, that a gedi, a small kid, could break through and jump into the sukkah because of this reva. It means it's more than 3 tefachim wide. Oh, shenosan aleh neseh shu rochav arba tefachim. Afal pishlo hichnis bitocha el shlosha tefachim psula. Now it doesn't make any sense. How do you read this brisa? The brisa says that the neser is 4 tefachim wide, but all you have on the sukkah is shlosha tefachim hechidamim. How did it happen? My love, it must be by cross illumination. We have no other pshat. Kigon shafachan al tzideh. He must have turned the neser on its side, and he's got a thickness of 3 tefachim, and it's less than the shear of a neser, a psul neser. And yet, the brisa says that it's possible. That would support Rav Huna and Rav Nachman that any schach, any neser of 4 tefachim in width is considered like mateches, and it's possible. One says lo. What's the case in the brisa? Kigon the anocha afuma dimetaltalosa. He placed this neser of 4 tefachim on the very top of the entranceway into the sukkah. He's got 3 defanos, and one area is completely open, and he puts a neser on top where you enter into the sukkah. The aisle tlosa legeo, the apik chad lebar. So 3 tefachim of this neser are covering the halal, the empty space of the sukkah. And one tefach's worth is outside the sukkah. Havilei psal hayotzi min sukkah. V'chol psal hayotzi min sukkah nidon kis sukkah. So we consider even that extension of the schach that goes beyond the boundaries of the sukkah, and we consider it as schach. And with machshir, the mokum shetachtov kisukkah ksherim, you're allowed to even sleep there and eat there, and you fulfill your mitzvah. There's a Gemara later on in Daf Yud Tes called Psal Hayotzi Min HaSukkah Kisukkah. And therefore, the same thing applies to this neser, but here it's going to apply lechumra, the exact opposite way. Why the tefach haravi, which extends beyond the bounds of the sukkah, if you would draw a straight line from the top to the bottom, is considered as if it's inside the sukkah. That's the din of psal hayotzi min sukkah nidon kisukkah. And if it's considered like it's inside the sukkah, then now we have a neser of 4 tefachim inside the sukkah as part of Yisnach, and it passes the sukkah. And therefore, if he puts it on the tzadar of V and there's no dofen there, and we don't have a possibility of applying the principle of dofen akum because there is no dofen there, therefore the sukkah is psula. Had it been that he had placed it close enough to one of the defanos, then we would apply the din of dofen akum. And that leads us to the Mishnah on Daf Tesvav Yemir Hashem for tomorrow.